Okay, hello everyone. It's me again for part two on the module descriptor. Let me share the screen, and in this video I will focus on the framework. I think in part one I mentioned that the Carbon Disclosure Project already developed the framework for SMEs or for small and medium size to measure and report on carbon disclosure and climate change, etc. So in this video, I will talk about more about the framework. So what it's all about. Let me do that. The need for small businesses to report on climate change. I think I might mention some of that in the previous video, but this is because a significant proportion of the world business are small and medium size enterprise, and they are contributing between 70 and 90% all over the world, especially after COVID and with lockdown and with many large and big businesses and companies and listed companies redundant, having a kind of policy redundancy for many employees in kind of mid-age. They haven't reached their retirement age yet, so many of these people started their new their small businesses, and we can see them around where we go. So this is why I think the more development of the SMEs is, the government policy maker realized how important SME is to any economy. So they are producing, they are important role, and they have, as long as we admit that they are contributing to the economy, that means we have to admit that they have also a role in reducing global emission and protecting the nature and enhancing the environment and be eco-friendly, etc. And of course, bringing innovative ideas for climate solution. So this is why the Carbon Disclosure Project, or the CPD, offers some tools and resources. It's not offer, they developed some tools and resources needed to help SMEs to grow and prosper and measure greenhouse gas reduction and action plans, etc. So they provide guidelines for SMEs on doing exactly on measuring the carbon emission and the climate change. It's open for anyone to use, and they provide a huge unlimited amount of support. So here the need for SMEs to report in climate change, because again they are making the majority of the global economy. So they are this framework or these kind of standards or criteria or guidelines, you can call it whatever you want, because they are not standards yet, because it's not mandatory, but they are guidelines, instructions, framework, show you how to do things to provide environmental disclosure and science-based target setting. Since November 2020, I think even after the COP26, when they realized and when they tried, the whole world started to realize how important the climate change and how important measuring. They started to realize that disclosure and reporting is very important as well. So there is the Carbon Disclosure Project, there is the SME Climate Hub, and they created a partnership with Essential Roadmap Initiative and Normative for SMEs to provide this disclosure. So why SMEs need to tackle climate change then? Why on earth is that? As I mentioned in the video, the first part of video one, to build business resilience, to gain competitive advantage, to keep up with supply chain demand and policy regulations, and meet customer expectations. And of course, because they are not working in space, they are working with the stakeholders. So for example, if SME is offering service or product or producing product or offering services, that means if the customers are not happy and satisfied, they will not be out of the business. If the reputation is not high, they will not be able to recruit employees to work with them. If they are not dealing with suppliers, that means they will never ever find kind of suppliers to provide them with some material, etc. So it's kind of interconnected relationships between all stakeholders. This is more about that why they need to tackle climate change. That again, after the COP26, there was immediate call, urgent call for every single company all over the world, including larger companies, big companies, small companies, medium-sized companies, to tackle that, to think about it, to measure climate change and report in it, or provide disclosure on that. So the framework built on a core section consists of 3 modules or 3 sections. Don't call them modules, we call them sections, or components, or factors, or variables that they are commit and measure and impact on action. As I mentioned, also this is not came from space. There was a huge discussion with stakeholders, and the stakeholders' opinion of why SMEs should report on climate change, should be involved in first measuring the climate change, and setting targets for the futures, and then report on that. So, for example, here Sonia is the head of value chain on corporate and regional director of corporation. She mentioned SMEs play a major role in economic around the world, and that means we hope that the framework will empower the SMEs to take climate change in turn. Christian is the CEO and the co-founder of Normative. Mentioned also that every business needs to achieve net zero emission, but we recognize that small business have limited finances and resources. This is why that we developed this free tools and resources and the criteria and the guidelines for SMEs, ready for SMEs to use them. Other one is Maria, CEO of We Mean Business Collision. Also that mentioned that over 3,000 companies have joined the SMEs Climate Hub, committing to cut carbon, because of course, nobody nowadays, specifically after COVID and specifically after everybody realized how important our rules as normal people, as public, to contribute to protect our environment, just to avoid getting any kind of diseases like COVID. So everybody was really keen. What is my role to do? Last one, John is again CEO of the SME Climate Hub. Said SMEs need to be able to report on progress on climate change to gain a competitive business advantage. So it's a kind of stakeholders' point of view that we have to kind of take some steps forward. What happens if the SMEs are not engaging with climate change reporting and disclosure? Of course, if SMEs are not brought on board, they risk facing competitive disadvantage. They're losing out on low carbon opportunities. They might lose out of attracting, keeping or preserving the current customers and attracting new customers. They might lose on appointing some employees. So it is very vital for SMEs that are supported making all these opportunities. Their flexibility and the capability to innovate them well placed, and of course, again, having these guidelines and the tools and the resources for free, because most of the SMEs cannot afford to kind of hire a company, hire someone to do all of this for them. So, for example, a supply chain emission are on average of 11.4 times higher than operational emission. Many larger companies want their suppliers, often SMEs, to measure, report, and cut down their own emissions. So again, big companies when they are dealing with small suppliers, which is they are dealing with SMEs, they are very keen to kind of show off that we are dealing with suppliers who are reporting and measuring climate change and provide disclosure on that. So SMEs that are unable to provide all of this, definitely they will face with some risks, and this will have implication on the economic development, etc. Why they have to take part? Because SMEs have a very significant role to play in both employment level and employment growth. So of course, this is back to the point that they're contributing to any economy, because nowadays some of the big larger listed companies, they might be out of the business, out of the market. So we realized during COVID that small business are kind of replacing some, not all of them, but they taking kind of a step forward. So in high income in countries, SMEs with up to 250 employees have a 65% contribution employment. The number rises to 78 for the low income countries. Low income countries, you can find this small business, and even with low income countries, the informal sector that nobody know about them is very, 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 very high percentage in the less income countries or the developing countries. So many SMEs relying on finance from banks, as you know. So it is important to provide them with this with the framework for free. What is the definition of SMEs for the purpose of the framework? It's defined as non-subsidiary organization with less than 500 employees, which is in line with the definition by SME, Climate Hub, and Science Based. This can be further categorized as micro, less than 10, small, between 10 and 50, medium, between 50 and 500. So all the framework is for everything. It's for SMEs, small and medium size, and the small kind of cover the micro that have micro businesses that have less than 10 employees, and the small that have between 10 and 50, and of course the medium. The definition might varies between country and region, etc. But of course, for the sake or for the purpose of this training, we are absolutely fine with this definition. Important note: reporting on all the modules in the framework. You can, they call them modules, but I call them variables, factors, etc. There are some core ones or important ones, or give them priority, is measure, commit, and action and the impact. And there are some other more about energy, etc. Energy, etc. I will talk about this later. The purpose of the framework is to stimulate SMEs understanding and reporting of the most vital climate-related and encourage immediate climate action. So the framework will help for this sustainability reporting, process that data on the SMEs climate performance can be provided to investors and purchasers and policymakers and employees, etc. Because as I mentioned in the previous video, investors nowadays, they are very keen, or even financial institutions, they have one of the main criteria now for providing loans is something about nature. Anything that will anything against nature, or anything has a negative impact on nature or negative impact on environment, they will not provide loans, etc. I think the same concept will be transferred into the SMEs. Objective of the framework, more understandable, streamline, and the resources representative. Who developed it? As I mentioned previously, it's a kind of, it's not one person, it's not only the CDB, it's a kind of a collective people, collective bodies, just to make sure that they are kind of representative also from SMEs, just to make sure that these criteria can fit with micro, small, and medium size. This is more about how it's developed. I think this is you can read it in your time. Who are the users, data providers, who are data users, and the organization that link the two. So we have data providers and we have data users. Data providers, that's you, the SMEs. SMEs, these are the data providers. So you produce, you measure climate change, you disclose about it, you report about it, so you provide the information about that. And data users, these are organizations that use the disclosure information, disclose the information. And it's not only organization, might be individuals, might be researchers, might be PhD researchers, might be other researchers who are involved in that. So both may connect that data providers and data users, at least you know who they are. Alignment and mapping with the framework. Guiding principles. So when the framework, or when the people of the framework prepared this kind of framework or criteria or whatever, they have 7 principles. It should be relevant, it should be clear, it should be objective, accurate, complete, verifiable, comparable, impactful, and report annually. It is recommended that the SMEs report against metrics, and again, not the modules, the variables or the factors. Measure, commit, and action, and the impact. And here is how to use the framework. The framework, of course, this will be, I will talk about this later in details on our live session, because this is what we are going to do. How to report. Of course, in the report, in the criteria, there are some items saying you shall, or you should, and should or require or shall. That means throughout the module, the term shall is used to indicate a requirement. That means you have to provide disclosure on blah, 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 blah. Indicator denoted using shall are considered to be crucial for reporting. That means you have to report, or even if you don't have information about this particular item, you have to provide reasons why you cannot report on that. However, should, in the other hand, is used to indicate a recommendation. So the framework recommended that even if you are not measuring and reporting, that you should consider this in the very near future. Implementation, the framework provides key climate-related reporting indicators, and the metrics should be reporting and encourage setting, and it should provide flexibility for SMEs. Because, for example, what can be implemented, measured, and reported, etc., in one sector cannot be the same with the other sector. So, of course, the flexibility, the sentence or the items or guidelines or instructions are very flexible to be interpreted. When they issued the framework or the development, the recommendation that SMEs adopt the core modules immediately, and at least engage with that immediately. These are the modules or the factors or the variables that the framework asks SMEs to report on them. Measure, commit, action, and the impact. This is what they really need to see within each SMEs. Measure emission is crucial first step that every company must take to understand its negative impact on climate and take the right steps to reduce it. So basically, you have to tell outsiders what are you doing, because not all stakeholders or outsiders, all readers are not involved in a day-to-day operation. So we really need to know what are you doing to reduce climate change. What are you doing? What steps you have taken? So provide us with information. Commit, that means setting targets and align them with 1.5 future demonstrates for company commitment to reduce its reduction and the contribution to climate change. Action and the impact, reporting on key action and any initiatives a company can take or taking to reduce emission. Additional modules or additional variables that if the company of the SMEs already have information about energy, about value chain, about management and resilience, about climate solution, this will be amazing. And this is what we mean by measure. Before I move, I will stop share here, and I will share again because I want to show you the reporting criteria. So this is the reporting criteria. I summarized them in a kind of a Word file. Of course, it will be with you as a material. So the criteria for that I put here. This is the first one, measure what they mean by that, and these are the requirements: reporting year, gross global, blah blah blah, and the calculation methodology. This is what you have to disclose about in terms of measure, in terms of action and plan, no commit. This is the second one, and of course action and the impact is the third one. I have also added the additional ones, which is energy, value chain, supply chain, and leadership. And also at the end, I am telling you what each one of them means instead of going back and forth or looking at the PowerPoint. So I'm summarizing this. I think this will be very good to have it with you, at least kind of, to look at the items where, what you're supposed to disclose, and for how to disclose it, and whether it's a should or shall, and for each one of these things. What does it mean measure? What does it mean commit? What does it mean action and impact? What does it mean energy? So I think I summarized them 10 pages or so, but I think it will be very easy to use. Of course, I will try to use some of them, or at least to do some practice on that, showing you a kind of a live SMEs, how they started to get to interact and be involved in measuring and reporting climate change, and we can do some tasks together on the last session. That's me. We'll see you in the last video shortly. Bye bye.